Yay! So that was nice. I love to do that. So anyway, I just want to start by talking about, well, the C-5 was turning over its engines. A female crew member gave the GIs on board the usual information regarding seat belts and emergency exits and when the oxygen mask drops, what to do. Finally, she said, now sit back and enjoy your trip with your captain, Judith Campbell, and her crew while she safely takes you to Afghanistan. And old Master Sergeant sitting in the 8th row thought to himself, a woman? Did I hear her right? Did she say the captain is a woman? When the attendant came by, he said, did I understand you? Is the captain really a woman? Yes, she said. In fact, the entire crew is female. My God, he exclaimed, I wish I had 2 double shots. I don't know what to think with only women up there in the cockpit. That's another thing, Master Sergeant, she said. We no longer call it the cockpit. It's now called the box office. So because you may not be familiar with ISHV, I'd just like to briefly talk a little bit about our mission. The creator of the Institute for Science and Human Values is Paul Kurtz. Dr. Kurtz was Professor Emeritus of Philosophy at SUNY at Buffalo. He was also the founder of Prometheus Books, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, the Council for Secular Humanism, Free Inquiry Magazine, Skeptical Inquiry Magazine, and then separately for-profit Prometheus Books. He was a book publisher. And the reason he started the book publishing company is because he could not get his books published on secular humanism. I'm sorry to say that Paul died in October of 2012, but I am happy to say that ISHV is carrying out his mission and continuing on in his name. The founding document of the Institute is the Neo-Humanist Statement of Secular Principles and Values, and it was drafted by Dr. Kurtz and was signed by leading lights in their fields and those who believed in secular human rights. The preamble declares, our planetary community is facing serious problems that can only be solved by cooperative global action. Humanity needs to reconstruct human values in the light of scientific knowledge. Neo-humanists use critical thinking to evaluate claims to knowledge by reference to evidence and reason. Claims to knowledge are most effectively confirmed by the methods of science, where hypotheses are tested objectively. In those areas where scientific inquiry has not been effectively applied, every effort should be made to bring the best methods to bear so that beliefs are considered reliable if they are rationally justified. I do want to take a brief moment here to tell you that in the back of the room is our brochure. We also have, my business card is back there, so you have all of my contact information. And I also have a separate sign-up sheet for the Institute. If you would put your name, your email, and your zip code. And I really will not fill your inbox with a lot of information, but I do want to have it so that if it's the appropriate moment, I can send you an email, let you know what's going on in the Congress, because I lobby on the federal basis, and ask you to perhaps make phone calls or send emails to your legislators. The reason that I'd like your zip code is so that I know who your legislators are. So I hope that you'll consider doing that after my talk. So given our philosophy, let's examine the current state of public policy and federal law, and why we think it's necessary to continually advocate for science and reason and secular democracy, and I say that with a small d, and end the use of religion as an excuse for discrimination, and especially with regards to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA. RFRA essentially places religious tenets above the rule of law. Make no mistake, the use of RFRA by the Congress, the Supreme Court, and the White House threatens U.S. secular democracy, and it's up to us, we the people, to bring a halt to this destruction. So the story of RFRA started in 1990 with the United States Supreme Court case that determined that the state of Oregon could deny unemployment benefits to a person fired for violating a state prohibition on the use of peyote on the job. even though the use of the drug was part of a religious ritual. The court ruled, although states have the power to accommodate otherwise illegal acts done in pursuit of religious beliefs, they are not required to do so. So these two fellows, Native Americans, were using peyote on the job. They were fired. They applied for unemployment benefits. Oregon said no. They sued. They lost, sued, lost, sued, lost. Got up to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with the state of Oregon. Many religious people were outraged because they considered this ruling sharply curtailed the reach of the First Amendment's First Exercise Clause. In response, RFRA was enacted by the Congress with broad bipartisan support in 1993. It was signed into law by then President Bill Clinton. RFRA prohibits any federal law that would substantially burden religious exercise without a compelling reason. Henceforth, new laws, mandates, would have to be achieved through the least restrictive means when it came to religious organizations, or as it turns out today, not at all. This gave religious institutions special treatment and places them above the laws most of us have to follow. RFRA is essentially being used to render civil rights laws unenforceable. So let me be clear on that. RFRA is being used to void long-established civil rights laws from the 1960s and on up. ISHP belongs to the Coalition Against Religious Discrimination, or CARD. CARD works to combat so-called charitable choice provisions in law, all government-funded religious discrimination associated with the faith-based initiatives, and of course, RFRA-based laws and provisions that were spawned by the 1993 law. Because we were successful in stopping the corruption of laws with the use of charitable choice provisions in the Congress, Tea Party representatives decided to change tactics by moving the battle from the Congress to the executive branch. Under the George W. Bush administration's influence in 2007, the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel issued a memorandum that concluded that RFRA bestowed a particular religious organization, the World Vision Church, with an exemption from a federal non-discrimination law on the grounds that compliance would violate the organization's free exercise of religion. The Office of Legal Counsel, or the OLC staff, are the lawyers for the Justice Department lawyers. So the OLC is a federal office that is housed within the Justice Department. This memo, known as the World Vision Church Memo, allows the church to receive millions of dollars in federal funds, even though the church requires all U.S. employees to sign its Christian Statement of Faith and the Apostles' Creed to work there. We believe the OLC's memo's interpretation that RFRA overrides statutory non-discrimination provisions is erroneous, and that it threatens civil rights and religious freedom laws. Although the OLC memo supposedly was to govern only the singular incident it analyzed, it has been used to claim broad, sweeping exemptions to civil rights laws, rendering the OLC memo a dangerous and unwise precedent for widespread misuse of RFRA. In fact, as you probably know, it is currently being used to deny health care benefits to women as demanded by the Affordable Health Care Act. Here are some things you may not know the memo is being used to justify. The United States Conference of Catholics, or the bishops, wants exemptions from a long-standing requirement that government contractors not discriminate against their employees based on sex. They are demanding to legally discriminate against women based on their religious beliefs. Their goal? To enforce the patriarchy and deny women equal treatment under the law. In other words, They want to be able to deny women employment in a church-affiliated corporation which issues paychecks funded by taxpayers' dollars simply because they are women, or because they are a woman who has a child that is unmarried, or if she's a lesbian, or if she is of no religious faith, or if she is of a different religious faith. A paramedic student has claimed his religion should exempt him from vaccination requirements. A military judge issued an interim order barring military women from some of their duties. Again, the bishops, the National Association of Evangelicals, and 3 other organizations believe they have the right to refuse to provide sexually abused child refugees with a full range of health care services. They say that RFRA means that they are entitled to taxpayer funding to assist unaccompanied migrant minors, many of whom have been raped, despite the fact that they refuse to provide those teens access to or referrals for abortions and comprehensive contraception services as required by law. They go so far as to assert that these organizations can't be required to tell the government when they have a teen who needs care, because then the government might step in and help. And that is actually their language. In the states, legislators, governors, and businesses are instituting and citing state RFRAs to justify all manner of discrimination against lesbians and gay men, including commercial establishments. So currently there are 3 broad areas where you cannot discriminate, and that would be in housing, public accommodations, and hiring. And those are the 3 areas that religious organizations want to be exempt from. There were 18 states since 1998 through the end of 2012 that enacted state RFRAs. In the states that considered instituting RFRAs, some of the language would greatly broaden the current RFRA standard, does not include civil rights language, and would require, for example, such things as the actions of homeowners associations not to substantially burden individuals' exercise of religion. Some would extend RFRA to cover not only religious organizations, but individuals as well, by stating that they have the freedom of religion or right to act or refuse to act in a manner motivated by a sincerely held religious belief. Some also include the language, and I quote this, "No locality, municipality, county, or other instrumentality of this state shall, ... fill in the blank," effectively ensuring discrimination throughout the state. Some actions based on state RFRAs include a Kentucky court ruled in favor of a print shop that refused to make t-shirts for a gay pride parade, a Kansas executive order that actually drops religion as the only excuse to legally mistreat and discriminate against others. So a Kansas executive order is issued by the governor of Kansas. In part it reads, quote, "General protection of the free exercise of religious beliefs and moral convictions." And here we start on the slippery slope, where we are moving away from saying you can refuse to follow law based on not just religious belief, but also moral convictions. I just couldn't help myself. A Florida RFRA was passed in 1998, and it states, quote, "Whereas laws which are neutral toward religion may burden the free exercise of religion as surely as laws intended to interfere with the free exercise of religion." So currently and throughout our history, the way the Establishment Clause has been interpreted is that government must remain neutral when it comes to religion. Government may not favor religion, and it may not disfavor religion. And back in the days of when they were writing the Constitution, there's a record of discussion of favoring, for instance, all religion. And that was denied by the founders of our country. So there's a House bill in Florida, it's House Bill 401, and it was introduced in Florida in October of 2015. According to the Florida ACLU, it would grant individuals, government employees, hospitals, and yes, corporations, and other organizations the right to refuse an extraordinarily wide range of medical care, goods, and services based on their beliefs. No state has considered, let alone passed, a bill that goes this far. It's the broadest religious exemption bill of its kind in the country. Given the current elected officials, this extreme bill will almost certainly be passed this year. Here's some of what would happen when and if it is. Government employees could pick and choose to whom they provide government services, such as denying marriage licenses to same-sex couples, or a driver's license to a transgender person. A medical provider, hospital, or hospice could, based on their religious beliefs, refuse to follow a patient's directives about end-of-care life. Now, I have a personal story on that, actually, when my father-in-law died. An adoption agency or foster care agency could refuse to place a child with a family member who is gay or of a different faith, even if that placement is in the child's best interest. A restaurant or business could refuse service to a gay couple or a biracial couple, or a person of a minority faith, or a single mom, or anyone, if they claim it would go against their religious or moral beliefs. At the federal level, the Justice Department, under both the Bush and Obama administrations, has said that the government would violate RFRA if it were to require that organizations not discriminate in hiring on religious grounds in order to receive government funding. It's hard to even say that, it's so convoluted. ISHVA's public policy staff has been working for a decade to undo RFRA and the OLC Memo and the widespread damage it's doing to our democracy. Damage that is spreading at a very rapid rate under past and current presidential administrations in Supreme Court rulings and congressional lawmaking. ISHV is also an inaugural member of organization of the Liberty and Justice Coalition, the CLJ. It is a broad alliance of secular, faith-based, and other organizations that work to ensure that public policy protects the religious liberty of individuals of no faith and all faiths to oppose public policies that impose one religious views over all. With increasing frequency, we're seeing individuals, businesses, organizations, and institutions claiming a right to discriminate by refusing to provide services to women, the disability community, and LGBT people based on religious organizations. These are the same arguments that were used in the 1960s to oppose laws regarding immigration in restaurants because of sincerely held beliefs that God wanted the races to be separate. We saw religiously affiliated universities refuse to admit students who engaged in interracial dating. These arguments were rejected back then, just as they should be rejected today. I do want to say that when we work in these coalitions, we get together on conference calls and in meetings, and recently we had a conference call and we had a guest on the phone with us who asked to address us that was a leader in the disability rights community. And they were very concerned because of the discrimination that is happening in that community. And as an example, we asked him to share some stories with us in writing. He shared the story of a married couple who were both intellectually challenged, who were moved to a religiously affiliated nursing home, assisted living facility. And because the owners of that home decided that they were not mentally competent to consent to sex, they were not allowed to live together. They had to live in separate bedrooms at that facility. And that's today. Even more dangerous today, the radical right is working to expand allowance of this discrimination for moral reasons. Imposing belief on others who do not share them goes against the very fiber and core of secular humanist and American family values. Here are more examples of the misuse of RFRA you may not be aware of. Affecting U.S. policy overseas, President Obama opened up the Office of Faith-Based Community Initiatives, the FBCI, in the U.S. Department of State in August of 2013. A press release states that it is the State Department's portal for engagement with religious leaders and organizations around the world. It reads, and I quote, "The FBCI reaches out to foreign faith-based communities to ensure that their voices are heard in the policy process, and it works with those communities to advance U.S. diplomacy and development objections." In accordance with this newly implemented U.S. strategy, which is named, quote, "Religious Leader and Faith-Based Community Engagement," end quote, the FBCI office guarantees that engagement with faith-based communities is a priority for department bureaus abroad, and it helps to equip U.S. foreign and civil service officers with the skills necessary to engage faith communities effectively and respectfully. In their words, it institutionalizes U.S. efforts by embedding religious leader engagement in policy and practice. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Hobby Lobby case. A Supreme Court majority blessed the use of RFRA by businesses to deny employees insurance coverage for contraception, a benefit guaranteed by the law, if those businesses objected on religious grounds and there was some other means of furthering the government's interest. Religiously affiliated nonprofit organizations, such as universities, are taking the argument further. They invoke RFRA to argue not only that they should not have to provide insurance coverage for contraceptions, but also that they should not even have to notify the government that they are refusing to do so, because once again, they maintain notification would trigger the government to interfere to ensure coverage. In July of 2015, the Healthcare Conscious Rights Act, the HCCRA, was introduced in the Congress, which would put into permanent law two broad rights of refusal. First, employers would have an unprecedented ability to shirk their legal obligations based on the employer's moral or religious objection. HCCRA would take the Supreme Court's Hobby Lobby decision to the next level by allowing even more companies to opt out of the law and harming those the law is supposed to protect. HCCRA would allow any employer or insurance company the right to refuse to cover any of the preventative services or any essential health care benefits, allowing these entities to deny critical health care to millions who rely on such entities for insurance. They could refuse to cover screening for type 2 diabetes because of a religious or moral objection to a perceived unhealthy lifestyle, such as overeating and lack of physical exercise. They could refuse to cover HPV screening. HPV is the most common sexually transmitted infection in the United States today, and they could do so due to a moral or religious objection to the way the virus is transmitted. HPV can lead to cervical cancer, making early detection critical. They could refuse to cover HIV/AIDS screening or counseling due to a religious or moral objection to the way HIV/AIDS can be transmitted. They can refuse to cover prenatal tests for generic disorders due to the employer's religious or moral objection to such testing. They can refuse to cover maternity care because of concern that pregnant, unmarried employees could use the coverage in violation of the employer's belief that sex and procreation are permissible only within the marital relationship. They could refuse to cover certain prescription drugs due to a religious or moral objection to the research methodology used to discover the drug, such as stem cell research. Further, HCCRA undermines the basic principle of insurance. In addition to allowing plans and employers to undermine the ACA's coverage guarantees, HCCRA allows individuals who purchase insurance in the individual market to do the same. If one individual claims a particular service is contrary to her or his religious or moral belief, the plan does not have to cover it, even if required to do so by the new healthcare law. By allowing each individual to pick and choose specific medical services to be covered in a plan, HCCRA radically undermines the basic principle of insurance, which involves pooling the risks of all possible medical needs of all enrollees. The language is vague enough that if even one individual objects to any of the required coverages, insurers may be able to deny coverage to an entire marketplace. Consumers in a market could even lose coverage of the full range of critical health services. As an example, an individual could object to coverage of vaccines for children, so the plan could then not be required to cover vaccination. A man purchasing an insurance plan offered to women and men could object to maternity care, so the plan would not have to cover it for women, even though such coverage is required as a part of essential health care benefits. Second, HCCRA includes the Abortion Non-Discrimination for Healthcare Providers Act, or ANDA, which would greatly broaden existing refusal rights regarding abortion. ANDA expands and further entrenches current laws under the guise of protecting the conscience of healthcare providers, bar federal, state, and local governments from enforcing laws preserving or requiring access to abortion. In short, ANDA significantly expands the reach of and makes permanent the Weldon Amendment. The Weldon Amendment prohibits any federal agency or program or any state or local government from taking action against a wide range of healthcare entities, including insurance plans, if they refuse to provide, pay for, cover, or even refer for abortion care. We have cases right now where women take their birth control prescription to a pharmacy, and the pharmacist not only refuses to fill that, but keeps the prescription and throws it away, refuses to even hand it back to the woman, forcing her to go back and get another prescription and find a pharmacist who will fill that for her. That's going on in the United States today. For example, under ANDA, those who participate in the provision of abortion, a vague term that could mean that only those transcendentally involved in abortion care, like an admissions clerk, an ambulance driver, or the person who processes medical claims, could refuse to comply with laws regarding abortion. It adds the Accountable Care Organizations, or ACO, to the list of entities protected by this broad refusal. ACOs are groups of doctors and hospitals and other healthcare providers who come together voluntarily to give coordinated high care to their Medicare patients. The goal of coordinated service is to ensure that patients, especially the chronically ill, get the right care at the right time, while avoiding unnecessary duplication of services and preventing medical errors. It contains no exceptions for the health or life of the woman, nor in the cases in which a pregnancy is a result of rape or incest. This means that, for example, ANDA would protect a hospital that refused to provide an emergency abortion even though federal law requires the delivery of services in life-threatening emergencies. 7 in 10 Americans support access to legal abortion. 1 in 3 American women has an abortion in her lifetime. Many White House hopefuls running for president today don't think women should have the right to self-autonomy. It is, if one is elected and Congress passes these bills, they will sign this bill into law. Make no mistake, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act places religious tenets above the rule of secular law. It threatens U.S. democracy, and we the people must stop this. We must stop radical religious organizations, their minions in the Congress and state legislators in their tracks, and put secular rule of law back in place to its fullest extent. Science and secularism are necessarily linked, and both are indispensable if we are to have sound public policies that will promote the common good, not only of Americans, but of the global community. When congressional members and their staff are told of membership organizations with a mission to promote and defend science in law and public policy as opposed to religious dogma, when they become aware that citizens around the country are willing to actively advocate for policy grounded in evidence-based outcomes, we often witness a sigh of relief from our congressional members, a straightening of the spine. I call on you to actively fight against these policies and proposed laws. You may wonder how you can do this. Identifying as a member of a secular rights community is of the utmost importance. Join the movement for secular rights by becoming a member of ISHTI and a member of the First Coast Free Thought Society. If you are not already, renew your membership also. Ask like-minded folks to join in with you. The more members we have, the more influence the community has with elected officials and the media. It's important to use email alert systems that generate calls and letters to congressional members at appropriate times, which is why I've asked you to give me your email. There are sign-up sheets in the back for these alerts. There's also brochures for membership applications in the back for ISHTI and for the First Coast Free Thought Society. Our representatives are so beaten down by the religious right Tea Party, they simply don't believe that they have the backing of the majority of Americans. It's up to us to change this erroneous perception. Be sure to inform other groups you belong to, your friends and family members of these threats. Share the handouts you're given, and I have extras, so take as many as you want. Access the ISHTI website for up-to-date information. Like the ISHTI Facebook pages and follow us on Twitter, and do the same for the Free Thought Society. Make the entries from the handouts you have at any time and do it as often as you think about it. A steady drumbeat is necessary. We can't do this alone, and we're counting on you to help spread the message and gin up support. We can and we will win this fight. Your passion and commitment to human rights inspires us to do the work we consider important and essential. The religious right is bankrolled by some of the wealthiest individuals and churches in the world. Please donate to ISHTI and to the Free Thought Society. We have forms in the back of the room and online. Donations fund ISHTI's speaking tours and advocacy efforts in the legislatures in DC and the states. Donations to the First Coast Free Thought Society provide the resources to hold informational meetings such as this one and the other work that they do. You can make a difference. Donate whatever amount that is affordable to you, from $1 to $100,000. It's up to us to end the use of religion as an excuse for discrimination. And remember, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you for your attendance and your attention.